Hello, this is Jeff Stevens from oregonplex. Thank you for coming back to check out another of my Portland area 2 to 4-plex only market reports. This is for the month of April 2026. And as you may know, I like to divide the inner city of Portland into the east side, northeast, southeast, and then also including North Portland in that, separately from northwest and southwest, and then what is now called South Portland down on the south waterfront, kind of macadam area. I like to keep those two separate because I find they have different dynamics. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the latest report data for the west side of Portland. And we're going to dive into that right now. So on the west side of Portland, we always have a smaller overall amount of data. There's fewer of these properties on the west side of Portland, and they do tend to be a little bit more expensive, generally speaking, and probably a little bit newer kind of overall too. So when we look at April 2026 here, we see 12 currently active transactions, which is the same as it was last time. But when we did this in August, for instance, it was 30. So quite a big difference. That's probably, I'm guessing, a bit of seasonality. In the last 30 days, we've had 3 new listings. And if we want to look at this from a price per unit standpoint, we're right now at 300 and basically $94,000. That's a little bit less than it was in March on an average basis, but higher than it was this time last year or even in August of last year, where we were in 340 or 323. Now, because the data points or the data volume here is smaller, I do think it's important to not realize we have massive statistical significance, I guess you might say. There's not thousands and thousands of data points creating these average. There's, a dozen or a couple dozen in this case. But what we can see is that things are a little bit more expensive and they've actually been on the market a little bit longer for on average too. I just covered up my own writing. So 138 days on market versus 75, 88, 73 in the last couple times. So when I pull this data now, it shows that things are hanging around on that market a lot longer. And that probably does correlate with the fact that the price is a little bit higher. People are probably fishing for prices that might be a little bit above where they should be. There's only one property currently pending. It's at $600,000. It was on the market 14 days. And so that shows the 14 days shows us for that particular property, they did a good job of pricing it and presenting it in a way that reflected what the market thought was reasonable. And within a couple weeks, it went pending. Now, if we look down at the closed, well, actually, before we talk about the closed, I always like to look at the expired, withdrawn, or canceled listings in the last 90 days. And because this to me shows it exposes a little bit people who place a property on the market. It's not priced correctly. They know that, but they're just trying to see if maybe they can fish for a buyer. And so we saw 7 of those in the last 90 days just get taken off the market, which is very consistent with how it's been the last few times we've looked at this data. So let's take a look now at the closed transactions and just do a little bit of comparison with the active transactions. I think this is always an interesting juxtaposition. So 8 have closed versus 12 being active currently. The average price per unit ended up being $332,000, and the average days on market was 97. I still consider personally 97 to be kind of a lot, but it is certainly less than 138. So up here in the active category, you have people swinging for the fences with nearly $400,000 a unit, and it's taking them a long time, and they're kind of still not succeeding at 138 days. But down here, we've seen people succeed at $332,000 a market and getting it done in less than 100 days, which, like I said, is still kind of a long time in my opinion, but maybe is more in line with where the market is overall right now. Another interesting thing to always look at, and I'm doing a really good job of covering up all my own data so you can't even see it anymore. Okay. Another interesting thing just to look at is price per square foot. The current properties are listed at a price per square foot of $335, and the closed ones are $291. So not a massive difference, but a meaningful difference, I think, especially when you consider a lot of these properties are, 3,000 feet or so. that, say, let's call it $40 a square foot, that translates and definitely makes the price quite a bit different at the lower price per square foot. The other thing that this report doesn't show, but that is important for small multifamily properties, is gross rent multiplier. In my opinion, when I work with clients, I'm also always calculating gross rent multiplier for them and for comp properties so that we know, is the market saying, yeah, we'll pay, 15 times the annual gross rents of the property, or is the market saying, no, we'll only pay 10 times? And where in that spectrum are we? And that's always an important consideration too, that I suspect if we did that in this report, that we would see that the closed ones would have a lower GRM than the active ones as well. So that is the market report for April 2026 on the west side of Portland, 2 to 4 unit properties only. I'm Jeff Stevens. This is all I do is focus on duplex, triplex, and fourplex. It's what I've built my portfolio on. I have about 55 doors at the time that we're recording this. And I like to specialize in just that. So if that seems like the kind of inch wide and mile deep, expertise that would be helpful to you, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat with you about your property. Take care. Thank you.